Welcome to SOC this Monday morning on April 13th. We are so happy you're with us. There was a little delay in understanding that we were on, but I'm so grateful that you're here. If you give me a second, I'd like to welcome our Spanish speaking neighbors into the program. Gracias por estar con nosotros este lunes 13 de abril para las 3 p.m. con SAC. Si ustedes quieren acceso al programa en su idioma, en español, tenemos una opción disponible que es compartir el programa por medio de una llamada de conferencia en el número que aparece en pantalla. Es el 425-436-6200. Cuando contestan la llamada, por favor, comparten el clave o la contraseña que aparece empezando con el número 6, que es 627-682. Thank you for giving me that time to welcome our Spanish-speaking residents. Today, we are continuing with a special edition of 3 o'clock with SOC. We have a very special guest who's going to be joining us in just a couple of minutes for us to continue to try to understand what took place last Tuesday in the election, and understanding that today's the 13th, which is a pivotal date in the election, and we'll talk more about that. Please understand that the views and opinions shared in this community forum are not necessarily those shared by SOC, as a disclaimer. Today, instead of our regular forum schedule, the regular segments that we have for the forum, we're going to share with you a larger portion of the community forum time on the topic of the election. So normally, we would start out the show and give you an update, any like breaking news that took place during the weekend, in particular with the coronavirus or with the elections. And this weekend, unlike so many of the other days, there wasn't a great deal of change or shift. So there isn't breaking news this morning. And then we usually share a coronavirus resource, and we have one starting tomorrow to share with you again. And then we dig into our civic segment, anything to do with voting, the election, or the census. We feature one of our programs, and we're trying to get information from you all on what you would like to be hearing and engaging about in the community, any ideas you have for viewers' choice or resident choice. I'd like to invite you to be with us every day, 3 o'clock with SOC this week. We're trying to line up a special edition guest tomorrow. Otherwise, we will be bringing you our regular community forum, tons of important information that you want to hear. And then hopefully Wednesday, we'll have Jesus Salas with us, a legacy leader in farm worker rights. So I want to remind you, as we start off real soon with our guests, that we have a daily drawing for you to enter, understanding that we want to support our small businesses and understand this is also a financial hardship for you all. We have a sponsor who's providing $25 gift certificates daily that you can win. And how can you enter the drawing? You can like this Facebook Live, you can share it, you can share a comment or a question here in our comments box, and we have our staff paying attention to that and logging that in for you. You can make a suggestion for a new segment on the show. You can share with us a photo or selfie that you took during the election to demonstrate that you participated in it. Or you can share a screenshot or a selfie demonstrating that you were counted in the census. And last, we really would like you all to participate in our survey. It'll appear in the comments here while we do the show. It only is 3 or 4 questions. It takes only a couple of minutes to fill out, and it's really to talk about, was the information helpful to you? What did you find positive? What could we change? And any thoughts you have. That's as simple as it can be. So right now, I'd like to welcome our guest, Ed Palone, who's a law professor with our esteemed Marquette University, and we're so appreciative that he can be on with us. Ed, welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC. We're not quite hearing you yet. We can see you though.
Yeah, yeah.
We can hear you now.
Now you can hear me. Okay, great.
We can.
Okay,
Welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC. We're so appreciative that you can be with us and that you've been working with us this last hour with the sort of weaknesses that we have in our current software accessing Facebook Live. So we're very grateful for you joining us in the misery that we've had this last several minutes.
well, I'm
What,
very happy. Happy to be with you, and we all struggle with the technology, Tammy, all of us.
yeah, we do, me in particular. Ed, we've been, since the election did take place on Tuesday, we've been trying to help the community understand the why around why it took place, despite the risks of the coronavirus, despite the safer at home order. And so, could you provide some thoughts and insights regarding the why? And then we can maybe move on to some of the more specific questions people have if it wasn't covered in your response.
Sure, sure. Happy to. I mean, to the extent I can explain, it feels a bit like descending on the site of a plane crash and trying to put back together how
Oh,
the disaster happened. Um,
yes.
well, as everyone knows, we had a situation where the governor declared a state of emergency in Wisconsin because of the coronavirus outbreak. And on March 24th, the governor and the Department of Health Services issued an order, the Safer at Home order, which is directing all of us to avoid public gatherings. And it's why we are all meeting virtually and staying at home. And we are not supposed to go out except for essential services. And everyone knew that the April 7th spring election was fast approaching. And the governor and the Republican leaders in the state legislature initially continued to insist that the election was going to take place as scheduled on April 7th and that in-person voting would be possible. Although they encouraged everyone to use absentee voting if at all possible, and many, many people requested absentee ballots. But the situation continued to worsen. During this time period, as the election approached, many other states in a similar situation had the state legislature meet, pass a new law postponing the election date. Wisconsin didn't do that. Our state legislature did not meet, it did not pass a new law. And so, even though everyone understood that the April 7th election was coming, nothing was really done. And the situation continued to worsen as people became more and more concerned that going outside might expose them to the coronavirus. And so Governor Evers, just days before April 7th, issued his executive order number 74, suspending in-person voting on election day, postponing it till June, and um, directing folks who could vote absentee to continue that process, dropping off their ballots. But if you wanted to vote in person, saying it would have to be delayed until June. The state legislature, led by the Republican leaders, filed an emergency lawsuit in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, asserting that the order from the governor was unlawful, that he didn't have the authority to do that. And that was the case that the Wisconsin Supreme Court took up almost immediately, and they issued a ruling within hours, ruling that Executive Order 74 was unlawful, and that in-person voting had to go forward. And that's why there was so much chaos at the last minute. The last minute nature of the governor's order to postpone in-person voting, the last minute ruling from the state Supreme Court saying, no, the governor lacks the power to do that, it's going forward. And the court ruled 4-2, that the statute, the emergency management statute that the governor had pointed to that gave him powers in an emergency, did not permit him to delay in-person voting, that went beyond what he had in that power. Meanwhile, on the same time, all of this is happening at the state court level. A federal lawsuit was filed. That was filed by private individuals who asserted that their right to vote was being denied because of the coronavirus outbreak, because of the refusal of the state legislature and the governor to change the election rules in order to account for the coronavirus outbreak, that they were effectively being denied the right to vote. And District Judge Conley, who heard the case, was very frustrated that neither the governor nor the state legislature had taken any action. He indicated in this lawsuit that he was reluctant to make any order that might interfere with the election, but he ultimately ruled that absentee voting should be extended for a longer period of time. His ruling was up until today, the 13th, to allow for more people to vote through the mail from home and not have to go and try to vote in person. That ruling was then appealed through the federal court system all the way to the United States Supreme Court, which also issued a ruling on the eve of April 7th, holding that Judge Conley was wrong to do so and that no absentee ballots should be accepted any later than the normal date, which would have been election date April 7th. So it was the convergence of all of this last minute activity that led to such chaos, and people did not know what were the rules, what were the ways to cast a ballot, when was the election taking place, did you still have to go vote in person? It was utter, complete chaos and extremely disappointing. So that in a nutshell is how we got to where we are. And I'd be happy if you, Tammy, or if anyone watching this has any questions, to do the best I can to answer them.
Great. We have collected questions and concerns. So I'll share a couple of those. One of the points of authority clarification that we were looking for is, at any time, was a public health official at whatever level, federal, state, municipal, able to step in and declare, like, this is a public health hazard, to allow the grouping on this mass? So at any time, can a public health official jump in and override a Supreme Court decision based on health, like a national health hazard?
Well, it's a very good question. I would answer it a little carefully. We have very broad powers in the state law of Wisconsin that are given to the Secretary of the Department of Health Services to respond to an outbreak of communicable disease and to make any kind of order limiting public gatherings where they think it's necessary. And in fact, the reason why Governor Evers issued his Executive Order 74, delaying in-person voting, the reason he did that was because the Secretary of the Department of Health Services asked him to do so, advised him that it was dangerous to have in-person voting, and asked him to delay the voting. So we have a statute that very clearly gives the top public health official in the state the power to prohibit in-person gatherings. She advised the governor that that should happen. the governor issued his executive order. The interesting thing is that the state Supreme Court only considered the governor's powers under emergency law and refused to even consider in their decision whether or not the powers of the Department of Health Services under the communicable disease law, refused to consider whether that was relevant at all to the decision to delay in-person voting. So we actually have a system under the law that gives public health officials a broad range of power to deal with any public gathering during an outbreak of communicable diseases. The law is there. We had the official charged with that power. That official advised the governor that it was dangerous to have in-person voting, and the Wisconsin Supreme Court refused to even consider that in its ruling that Governor Evers lacked powers to do what he did.
At any given time, the legislature could have acted as well outside of the governor. They could have taken action in collaboration with the governor or outside of a collaboration and could have moved as well, correct?
And that's what we've seen in every other state. Every other state has been in a similar situation, and the legislature has simply passed a law delaying the election. It's easy. All they have to do is come into session, pass the law, choose a new date. The governor signs the bill. You're done. You're out of there by coffee break at 10 a.m. In a lot of ways in Wisconsin, this was a situation where both the legislature, the Republican leaders of the legislature, and the governor, our Democratic governor, were standing on the railroad tracks, watching the train come hurtling towards them, each one knowing if they worked together, they could avoid the oncoming disaster, and they refused to get it done. And this is where the partisan politics come into play. You can blame the Republicans for refusing to consider a delay and insisting the election had to happen. Obviously, the Republican leaders believed that it was advantageous to disrupt in-person voting and keep voter turnout low in order to advance the conservative Supreme Court candidate on the ballot. Lower turnout benefits Republican and conservative candidates in our state. Higher turnout benefits Democratic candidates in our state. You could also blame the governor, in a sense, for waiting till the last minute, strategizing that perhaps if he played chicken, if he let the crisis build, that would give him the upper hand. Obviously, that was a strategy that did not pay off. So I think there's blame to go around both sides. They should have worked together. They should have avoided this situation. It was entirely predictable what was going to happen, and it happened just as was predicted.
And another strategy that folks are wondering about is, could they have not sent every person or every household absentee ballots from the time of the Safer at Home order to ensure that more voters had an opportunity to vote?
Under the existing law, a voter has to request an absentee ballot. It cannot just be sent as a matter of course. You did have smaller municipalities like Whitefish Bay on the North Shore of Wisconsin that was able to send a letter or an email to every single resident asking, would you like one? I don't think it was really feasible for the state of Wisconsin to send a letter or email to every single resident asking if they want a ballot. And quite frankly, our elections are run in a very decentralized fashion. And so it is every individual local jurisdiction that controls the running of elections. And so you would have had to have coordination among all jurisdictions, all the counties, all the villages, in order to proactively reach out to every single voter in the state. So we don't have a statewide organization or agency that runs elections. It's decentralized. And the way the law is set up, to get an absentee ballot, you have to request it. They can't just send it out without having received some sort of a request.
Ah, um, what could happen, because we won't know, but to the folks who did request an absentee ballot within the deadline and have proof that they did and did not receive an absentee ballot in time to vote on the 7th?
Within the hour of who won, who lost in this election. And we're going to immediately see lawsuits being filed by the losing party. And those lawsuits will point to people who wanted to vote, whose vote was denied. And so we do know there were many people who requested absentee ballots around the state in plenty of time, and those ballots were never received in sufficient time for them to fill them out and return them. And so effectively, their choice was to either forego voting or show up in person and risk exposure. I don't know. I mean, from the point of view of a private individual who's upset because their vote, they were not able to vote absentee, I don't know that any private individual has standing to do anything about that. It would be the same as if you learned after voting that and your vote was never read. One person's vote doesn't change the outcome, and it doesn't really give one the ability to challenge the outcome. But a failed candidate, the person who lost the election, if demonstrate that the number of votes that were lost because of this was a sufficient change to the election, and that would be a pretty high number, even if the election is very close. It takes a high number of votes to actually result. But if they could show that, then they might have grounds to file a lawsuit and snap. That's a really big if.
Ah,
It's a really big if. And my guess would be that any court that gets one of these lawsuits would really much prefer to let the result stand no matter what it is, rather than keep this disaster ongoing into the future. A great desire to simply say, yes, it was a disaster, it was a mess, but the path, please move forward. It would be, I think, surprising to see a judge throw out the election.
oh, okay. That makes a little more sense, and it also explains some of the political fighting and strategizing. Another question is, are there laws in place that require a certain amount of time of notification of change for voting, given that the dates shifted, polling locations shifted, whether or not people needed a witness to witness their absentee ballot? Are there laws in place that say if something's going to change, this amount of time of notice has to be given and in these forms? Because what we're operating from now is, because a press release or announcement was made, that would have been sufficient notice to let the layperson understand what's happening. And of course, we don't believe that happened.
It would be nice in a perfect world. We again have a system of the governments that actually run our election. So things like where are the polling places going to be are determined by local government in response to local conditions, how many poll workers the local election board gets. And so state law does not set any kind of uniform standard of notice. State law doesn't define any sort of uniform standard of where the polling place is. All of that gets pushed back to the local governments. Therefore, the local governments have a great deal of discretion to make changes, even up to the last minute. And I don't know that there's any grounds to argue should be thrown out or going forward, looking to the future, trying to figure out how to avoid. There are many, many reforms to our election laws. A system where every registered voter receives their ballot in the mail, the control over the run-by agency as opposed to local. There are a variety of reforms that we see in the future. And I hope there's sufficient demand and pressure to take some action and do something so that we don't have to live through this again.
Yeah. Last, Ed, what do you think happens moving forward? So today is the last day for those absentee ballots to have the opportunity to arrive and be counted. What can we expect moving forward, not only with the election, but maybe challenges to what took place? Moving forward
is that the results will be announced this evening, that there will be at least one, perhaps multiple lawsuits filed by losing candidates trying to get the election results thrown out and a new election held. That, in my opinion, the chances of any of those lawsuits succeeding is very slim, and more than likely, whoever is announced the winner to be the winner, but is going to have an asterisk next to their name. And for the rest of their term, raised about their legitimacy and whether they legitimately won the election. It's necessarily their fault, but that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, that's what folks were talking about. All of the candidates who won, folks will be forever questioning if that was a valid result. Well, Ed, we want to thank you for your time and shedding light on this issue as we look forward to the announcement this evening and pay attention to how this moves forward and us as grassroots organizers, how to help folks participate and engage in the process that is going to fix the problems that were clearly illuminated in this last election. Thank you and stay safe, brother. We're very grateful for Ed Falone, law professor of Marquette University, helping us to navigate the activities, the decision-making, the power that was exerted on Tuesday for the election, the spring election here in Milwaukee and in the state. What we'd like to do now is continue with our forum, sharing information with you all on the election. So up next is a message from our civic engagement manager, Gabe Charles, sharing what we should expect, although Ed was very generous And to help us understand what's going to happen next, Gabe will be sharing what we should expect today in terms of from the Election Commission.
Happy to be here with all of you again. Hoping that everyone had a restful weekend full of self-care or whatever you needed to feel ready to take on this next week. For many of us, it is week 3 or more of quarantine, and for many others, it's yet another week of being at risk while doing the essential work in the city. So for those of you that are still out here doing the essential work, please know that your sacrifice does not go unnoticed. We are so deeply thankful for everything that you're doing to keep us all safe and keep us all healthy. So thank you so very much for your sacrifice. I have some updates for all of you about absentee voting and election results. As we all know, the last day for absentee ballots to be in to the Election Commission or be postmarked if using the mail system was April 7th. So they are still allowed to be counted up until today, April 14th, as long as they were postmarked by April 7th. But what was being found was that after April 7th, some of the absentee ballots that were coming in were not correctly postmarked. So they had this stamp on them that said April 2020 without a specific date. So this created yet another possibility for disenfranchisement during all of this chaos. And, if there was a confusion about what was going to happen with these absentee ballots. So the Milwaukee Election Commission met just a couple hours ago to decide what was going to happen with these absentee ballots that were not correctly postmarked. And thankfully, they are going to be counted as, legitimate ballots, legitimate votes. And so this is really good news. We are thankful that there's this snippet of sunshine during all of this mess. There were over 96,000 absentee ballots issued and over 77,000 ballots returned. This is still a huge number that weren't returned. And, as we know, there are still so many people that didn't get their absentee ballots on time and weren't able to cast their vote because of that. And many others got theirs in, but it wasn't postmarked on time, so it won't count if it's not postmarked by April 7th. So, still very upset about the fact that so many people did not receive their absentee ballots on time. I'll save my feelings. I know a lot of people are still upset, and I am as well. But at least we got, those that weren't postmarked correctly are counted. So a little snippet of sunshine. The election results will begin to be broadcasted after 4 p.m. today. They wanted to respect that today was the last day that absentee ballots could be counted. And so those results will begin to roll in after 4 p.m. today. So we will be back here tomorrow with more information about the election results and any other updates that come between now and then. Again, thank you everyone who did what you could do to cast your vote, to get your absentee ballot in, to vote early, or to go in on election day. You all are amazing, and hoping that everyone can be safe during this time. I will see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, Gabe. We appreciate your update. I want to say some hellos to our forum participants. Stacy Carlos, when are we supposed to get the results? Will they be the final decision? What you heard from Gabe and from Ed, that this evening we will be hearing those results. Those results can be challenged according to what Ed shared in court. It's unlikely that the court will prolong the chaos of what was the elections. And Ed's guess is that they will hold those decisions instead of continuing on with the chaos of the election. But we'll all be watching it unravel in front of us. Hello, Jeanette. Hello, Felipe. Good to hear from you, brother. Yes, we're very grateful we can get some of our legal and other legacy leaders to weigh in on the election and what's happening. Hello again, Jeanette, one of our faithful resident leaders. Um, we are going to move to our next segment. And this segment is to continue. We know that being safe is everyone's top priority. What we're hearing next to that was a desire to understand what happened in the elections and to express people's questions and concerns. There are a couple of more questions that I'll share that we had that maybe we can get answered later in the week by other folks. And then we're going to talk about a SOC program. So I'm just going to review a couple other questions that we didn't get to. Questions that are still seem to be unanswered is, why was Madison able to have 60 plus reported polling locations and Milwaukee only 5? Why, if the government at the federal or state level can find individuals when they need to, for example, to collect taxes, are they not able to get us information on voting? Why were other states like Ohio able to postpone the elections based on the threat of the coronavirus and we weren't? Who will be held responsible for the deaths that occur above and beyond the projected number of the peak of the coronavirus? Above and beyond that, because of the elections, who's going to be held accountable for those deaths? Like they could be considered like a homicide via mandatory election. Those are some of the things that are coming up in people's hurt and anger and disappointment. And so we will continue to collect your questions and concerns. Hola, Vanessa. She says, hope nothing like this happens again. As we heard from Ed Falone, what we should expect to see is election reform, and what we should be putting pressure on and engaging in is election reform, so this doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, some folks are thinking it was really much more to do with gaining political advantage than keeping people safe and running a clean election. And so we would like our elections and election results to reflect how people inspired or challenged us to support them and their pitch to represent us, right? Like, that's the reason we engage in democracy. That's the reason we want to see people in office, is because they earned our votes, not because they strategize on how to disenfranchise or eliminate our votes, right? That's what we want out of elections. And so we hope that the anger and concern and disappointment will turn into action on each one of your behalves. Moving on to, as I shared, people's first concern is being safe. Second, people were so concerned about that election and continue to want their answers to their questions. But we also have other life that we have to respond to in hopes that this self-quarantine will end, and that we will move on. And to that end, what we have now is our segment of the show where we feature programs and services SOC has. And one of the programs, probably the most loved program, or the one that gets the most of our affections, is our youth programming that we launched 2 years ago. So we have youth organizers with us in the summer, and then we were able to extend that now to year round. youth working on their personal, academic, and professional and community leadership through paid employment in order to develop their job readiness skills. And so we're very proud of that program, and we want to make sure that you don't miss that opportunity to participate in that. So now with us is our youth coordinator, Taylor Herrada, sharing the information on how to register for the program because the deadline is coming up very soon for summer employment. So with us now, Taylor.
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor and I am the youth coordinator for Southside Organizing Center. Today I'm here to talk to you about Employ Milwaukee's Earn and Learn program. Earn and Learn provides youth and young adults ages 14 to 24 an entry-level work opportunity while developing skills such as worksite communication and punctuality, and you gain job-specific skills and abilities. Employ Milwaukee is accepting applications for their Earn and Learn youth program now through May 9th. To apply, you must be aged 14 to 24 and you must live in Milwaukee County. Again, you can apply for the Earn and Learn job opportunity by visiting socmilwaukee.org or employmilwaukee.org and selecting job opportunities. If you or anyone you know is interested in an entry-level work opportunity, please apply with Employ Milwaukee's Earn and Learn program. If you have any specific questions about the Earn and Learn program, you can contact them directly by calling 414-270-7550.
Looking forward to having our youth on the near south side apply. What you need to know is that there are, I don't know, in the past, maybe like 300 youth applied, and there's only like, I don't know, 200 or 150 positions. In the past, there's always been a lot more youth applied than they had the spots. So the earlier you get your application completely in, the better. And you can also call SOC or contact SOC to get support in getting your application in. As well, if you live in our district, you can call 414-672-8090, 414-672-8090. You can email us at youth@socmilwaukee.org, youth@socmilwaukee.org as well, and we'll help you navigate that. Employ is where you'll put your application in, and we can, if you contact us and are wanting to be involved with our youth organizing, we will have 20 slots this summer for assigned youth. We have about half of those filled from previous youth who are remaining with us. So if you're interested in a placement with SOC, please call us. Even if you're not interested in a placement with us, but one on the near south side, we're more than happy to help you navigate that process. Now, I want to remind you that you need to enter into our daily drawing. And so you can do that by liking this Facebook Live, sharing it, putting a comment in, and we're encouraging your comments for a variety of things. One is just to ask your comments and questions like many of you did today. The other is to make suggestions for the viewer's choice, resident choice segment if you want to see us cover anything in particular. And then you can share proof that you voted and proof that you filled out the census. And what we're really asking you for, as we have started our journey here with you, organizing on Facebook Live or organizing virtually, digitally, is to give us some feedback so that we're really meeting your needs. So please, fill out the survey, which will help us to understand what's being helpful to you, what we need to change, and any ideas that you would have. At this time, we're going to bring on Marisol, our communications manager, to remind you of the drawing, and I'll be back with you in a little bit.
Hi, I'm Marisol, Communications and Digital Manager here at SOC. Thanks for tuning in to our live community forum. During our live forums, we have a daily $25 gift certificate drawing to a local restaurant or small business. Ways to enter are share this live video, like this video, leave a comment or question, suggest a topic for us to discuss, or fill out the survey located in the comment section. As a bonus entry, if you have any voting or census pictures, or take a screenshot of you visiting our website, you can enter that way as well. Thanks for tuning in and stay safe. Now let's find out who's won yesterday's raffle.
Thank you, Marisol. It looks like your message got cut off a little bit. Luckily, between the two of us, I think that we covered all of those ways in which you can enter the drawing. And as she said, we'd like to announce the winner of the certificate for Friday, those of you who were with us on Friday. And that winner is Lillian Ramos. Lillian Ramos. Lillian, please contact the office at soc@socmilwaukee.org to claim your certificate. And we want to remind you all to join us tomorrow, 3 o'clock with SOC, right here. Please be safe, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.